I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Hey.
We are continuing our 10 question series with the most informed people that we know.
Excellent.
Today, we get to have on Lindsay Taylor. Lindsay's been a professional therapist for 15 years. She's down in Huntsville, Alabama, has facilitated and led many an Enneagram workshop, and we are thrilled that she is joining us.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Welcome.
Lindsay, what's the best thing about living in Alabama?
Oh my gosh, what a question. I guess I would say probably the landscape. I mean, I think at least where we are, no, South Alabama may disagree, but North Alabama has the rolling hills, the foothills, the Appalachians, and it's at least for me, for a nature lover, it's got good landscape. So
nice.
This is what I've heard. I've never been to Alabama. My wife has been multiple times, and she comes back and she's just like, the greenery down there is just incredible. It's just like everything grows. We live in the middle of a desert for the most part, and so nothing grows.
You guys are in Denver though, right?
Hour north
We're
of Denver.
north of Denver.
Oh, okay. Well, still, I love Colorado. Y'all have a whole different level of mountains out there than we do. So they're bigger and better.
We like them.
Well, we're going to engage Lindsay with our 10 questions. And as a one, Lindsay, you're only the second one to be on our podcast. In over 5 years, we've had tons of threes, a handful of fours, eights consistently are making their way on, but the ones, it's just me. I feel lonely most of the time, actually.
Wow. So we're just special, I guess.
So I mean, we hold out perhaps for the best. But our 10 questions start with, what do you want? Our first question ends up being, Enneagram wise. Enneagram is about motive. When talking about what you want as a one, what sort of language might you use?
I can definitely relate to the language of being good. Not the best, not good necessarily in terms of in comparison to anybody else, but just morally appropriate, that kind of goodness. I think that probably resonates with me the most.
I love the distinction there. Not the best. I want to be good. I don't need to be the best. I love that. What do you think there, Teach?
I mean, that's the standard for goodness is from internal. It's not comparison. And we can see comparison exists in other types, particularly 2s, 3s, and 4s. But when ones are doing this kind of game, it's not comparison. If there is a level of comparison, it's still like an internal, like the rules are from inside the one.
Definitely.
No doubt. Do you have thoughts on that in comparison? I like this idea that it's not really about comparison.
Yeah, it's really not, because, well, for me, I guess we should jump right in and get personal here, but my background, my story starts with even my own internal standard. Like nobody told me any of this, but other than just the story itself that my parents had 2 children, my older sister and then my older brother. My brother passed away from leukemia when he was 2, and my parents had planned to only have 2 children, but they went through some things to shift those arrangements, and had like a 50-50 shot of having me, and they did. And so I was always told, from as early as I could remember, that, like, you have this special purpose, here's this story,
Mm-hmm.
all this. And um, they never told me, like, you need to, there was never, it was always just framed in a positive, like uplifting, encouraging light.
Mm-hmm.
But my internal world turned it into the pressure of, my life needs to be worth it. Then, like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't waste this opportunity. You do it to the best of your ability, not in comparison to anyone else, but just live your life to the standards that I made and within myself, that said you are worthy of having this opportunity of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, almost like they said your story is really special, and you sort of heard you're the replacement child, like the backup, so you better make it worth it.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's that survivor's guilt of kind of, well,
Mm-hmm.
then I need to at least be taking every opportunity I have to do it well, because
Mm-hmm.
I could have not been here. Like, if I don't do it well, then he should have been here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me because I'm sure it's the case that each type, and everybody, once they're Enneagram informed, could be asked the question, when did you first know you were X? When did you first know you were a 7 or a 6? Like, looking back, what would materialize for you? I've been trying to put my thumb on this for years, because people keep telling me that as a 1, I was trying to perform for my parents, which I never did because my parents weren't around. I wasn't even trying to perform for teachers. I may have been trying to perform, or not perform, but try to earn the respect and love of classmates. I can kind of put my fingers on that, but I just don't have that story. I do have a story of going into the place that really pops for me, and like looking backwards, was a buddy of mine who was wealthy in like 3rd, 4th grade. He had a baseball card collection, and his parents had purchased for him like those library index card
Card catalogs.
yeah, and he had stored all of his baseball cards in them.
Awesome.
And he opened one of them up, and they were just lined up. I was like, this is the best thing ever. The baseball cards are organized. And then he had his favorite player was on his wall with a big poster, and then every single baseball card in a plastic sleeve, neatly organized and on the wall. And I was like, this is the only thing I want right here. is to have all my baseball cards organized. So this is my first story, which this is all lead up to a question. All of it feels very positive in my mind of when did you know you were a 1, kind of, or at least looking back, what can you associate with your oneness from an early age? But many, when talking about like looking backwards and saying, this is where I really first see my oneness, my 9ness, my 3ness, it's associated with almost a traumatic story, or a very emotional story.
Yeah. It could be my therapy bent,
Yeah.
that makes me a little bit more to look back on things through a lens of, like trauma or woundedness. Because, I think for a long time, I would not have looked back at that as anything negative. I mean, I think it was probably in my own therapy, during graduate school to be a therapist. They were like, you really need to do your own therapy too. And did that. And that's where things started coming out of, like, that was a lot of pressure. Like, that wasn't just, but I always saw it as, this is how life worked for me, right? Like, this is
Right.
how I functioned well. And, I didn't get in trouble as a teenager, or, like, this worked for me in a positive way to have that thought process,
Right. Right up until it didn't anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. Within my therapy, I'm learning that I'm not as healthily adjusted to my parents' divorce as I thought I was, and like I'm almost 40, and that was more than 30 years ago. It's like, dang it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The only other thing that kind of comes in is on the not comparison, as I've kind of been thinking about this for the last 5 minutes, but I do get to comparison when in my stress move. But that's normally because something's broken. And so when something's broken, I might go into that force space, and it might be the comparative element may emerge, and it may be, how can I be better than, so that I can kind of re-elevate. I can experience that at times. I don't know if that pings for you as well.
I think, I know one of the ways that I might do some comparison, and I don't know if it's, about the stress move to 4 or something else. I was actually just talking to friends about this with like working out, and I did this with athletics too, that if I see that somebody else's physical body is capable of something, then I think mine should be too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I need to outdo them or that I need to,
Right.
because that they can, like, I have to be as good as them. It's just, I think my body should be able to do that, because I see a body capable over there doing it. And I think,
Yep.
okay, mine should.
I love that image that you're setting a standard in your mind. Like, this person can do this, so I should be able to. I love that. That's good. What are you going to say, teacher?
Yeah, it almost dips its toe into that comparison space, but it's not quite comparison. It's seeing a standard and internalizing it and saying, I should be capable of doing that, and if I'm not, there's something wrong with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, our second question has to do with our center, and we phrase this as, how do you see the world? You're taking in the world through your body, through your intuitive center. How would you put your own language to that? What do you experience?
I was actually afraid y'all were going to ask that about. I feel like this intelligence center, even when I'm teaching Enneagram workshop wise or with clients, it's the hardest for me to explain.
Ooh.
Because it just, I think it goes to that intuitive knowing. It feels like something that's just known. Like, it's not explainable verbally with words. It's not a felt sense of anything. It's just is. I don't know.
Yeah. So explaining gut instinct to people is so difficult, because if you know, you know. And if you don't know, there's no way for me to really explain it. Like, it's just like, I guess when you feel something, trust it. I don't know what to say here.
Yeah.
This, unfortunately for me, often pairs with my thinking repression. And so it's even worse, because you have these very strong intuitions about what's real, about what's right, about how the world is, but can't always get language around it to explain where you're coming from.
That is so true. That is so true. I was trying to think of examples of things as I was, thinking about these questions. And sometimes that's hard for me too, unless I sit here and talking it out with people and somebody brings up something that makes me think of something. But I was thinking about the example of, like, when I bake cookies. My sister, for example, who's a 6, sets a timer every time she bakes cookies. I never set a timer when I bake cookies. And she's like, how do you know when they're done? And I'm like, I don't know. It took a lot of talking about it for me to say, well, I guess one thing is I start to smell them. And so then thinking about kind of those 5 senses, I think sometimes helps me explain, the experiential gut center, whatever you want to call it. But, like I smell the cookies, and then sometimes there's just that passage of time. There's just this kind of innate knowing that it's been about 8 minutes. I don't know.
And then you take a peek and you're like, oh yeah, those are done.
Exactly. Or you look at them and you kind of go, they could use another minute. Yeah. It's all experiential, right? It's based on, I've done this so many times before that I just know.
Yeah. My partner is a 6, and we have had a lot of conversations about following recipes, because like she struggles on the other side of that, of like not really following the recipes and then not understanding why it doesn't turn out the way she expects. It's like, well, because you didn't follow. It's fine. Anyway, that was a side note.
I haven't put language to this, but I have the sense that because we our intuitive body types, and because our criticism goes inwardly, it actually is in some ways about our radar as well. If I maintain a healthy body, a good perspective, if I have the right beliefs, then my powerful intuitions about the world around me are probably right because I've done the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can feel good in the world. I can feel as though I know the things that are right to know. I don't know if you have that intuition. That's a half-baked thought, but does that ping for you at all?
Yeah. I definitely think I go through the world just thinking, okay, like I think I'm thinking about things right, like, but thinking repression is in there, so that's happening. But I do think that I'm very like thoughtful and very like trying to be introspective and self-aware. And so if I'm doing all of that, then surely um I'm doing things as right as I possibly could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think that intuitive place, especially without like work, like doing some real work on it, that intuitive place is so close to the heart space. Like that, it's for people who don't know, it's really hard to separate intuition from feelings.
Yeah.
And to identify which is which, and when people don't have the experience, don't have the work put in place to be able to identify that, it can be, especially with the thinking repression, this can be a place where one sort of gets stuck in a cycle of having intuitions about their feelings and having feelings about their intuitions, but not really knowing which is which.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because it's definitely been through Enneagram work that I have come to be aware of how much I evaluate my feelings through intuition, like how much it's so fast
Mm-hmm.
when you haven't done the work to like slow it down and look at it. It's such a fast thing that if I feel, I don't know, sad or hurt about something, I can so quickly tell myself if that's appropriate or not, if that's dramatic, if that's
Yeah.
being dramatic, if that's being, you know, um, too sensitive or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to take a stab at putting language for that for myself because I like that image. In Enneagram world, giving the difference between intuitions and feelings can sometimes be tricky. I always make feelings relational and intuitions spatial, but there is something about intuiting how you are coming across to others that I see there. Like I'm judging how my relational energy is working. So I'm intuiting how my relational energy is going towards others. And I'm quite severe in my criticism of that because that's where things can break. And unfortunately the criticism can sometimes be stagnating. It can ossifying. It can make you pause too long or make things weird. If you're in relationship with a one, you will know what it's like when things get weird because they have hit this kind of spot. And the intuiting how my emotions work. Feelings are the support center for ones. It's worth going down that road meditatively if you're one.
Because prior to all this, I would have said I'm not anywhere close to a feeler. Like I would have never said that's my support center. I thought I'm logical and I am, because of being principled, because of being, I'm logical and I am, a gut person.
And because you've done the work to rein in your feelings to make sure they're appropriately expressed in the appropriate spaces. Yeah.
They're just disciplined. They're there. They're just highly disciplined. Yeah.
We'll get to this when we talk about solving problems, but just as a footnote here, I think that's what goes on for me when I think of myself as a thinker. what's really taking place is I know how my coping style works, which is very much about shutting down my emotions and trying to think hard about what's right. And so, of course, I'm a thinker. I'm a thinker because when problems have emerged, that's my gear.
Yeah.
But perfect. I'm glad that resonates with you as well. You never know when, again, only the second one that we've had on, and we were talking about her book when our first guest.
Shout out to Juanita Rasmus.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
Question 3. By the way, you will notice, TJ, that in 5 interviews, this is the first time that we've actually gone in order.
I know.
To this point in time.
You might be jumping the gun here.
All these other folks are.
It's working so far.
Well, the discipline is here because when you brought up the thing about how we solve problems, I was gonna go down that road with you. I was like, no, we'll wait till we get to that question.
Everybody else just sabotages our podcast, Lindsay. This is the sort of guess that we have.
Several of our other interviews along these lines have just been all over the place, just weaving back and forth. It's like Candyland. It's amazing.
Well, I was just saying they're beautiful though. Like I love listening to all of them, so it works that way.
It was 40 minutes into Beth McCord. I just threw my notes up in the air. I was like, all right, we're just going where she was ago.
Because the 2 nines were
the nines. We're circling this sucker. Well, speaking of obstacles, anger is the underlying feeling for ones. And I routinely talk about anger going inwardly, but would you talk about your own experience of anger?
So I think some of this may be a little bit different for me, maybe because of my instinctual stacking. So I'm a social sexual one. My self-preservation is better than it used to be, but it's definitely not up there. So I think my anger can probably more easily go outward because I can have a lot of like expectations of others, society wise, community wise, group wise, and then in my one-to-one relationships, I can have a lot of expectations there, and when they don't get met, it can come out. Now there's still some coming back on myself, right? Like I will still be like, okay, if I could have, would have, should have done this, then those kinds of things, that still happens. But yeah.
I'm curious, like as a professional counselor, like you have been in therapy for a very long time, I'm assuming.
Right.
And I'm curious if this is something that you have had to really work on, or if this is part of just your normal rhythms that you had to become aware of.
Well, interestingly, kind of right when I started to learn about Enneagram, I was pursuing therapy, kind of a different modality of therapy than I had ever done before, for the sheer fact of that I was hating myself for how mad I was getting at my kids all the time.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's definitely something that I think has, just always been there, needing to be worked on. And Enneagram just gave me more understanding of why it's there.
Sure. Yeah.
I resonate with
kids are nuts and infuriating.
Thank you for the excuse.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
The way I've commonly thought about it in my own mind and heart is like, imagine a basketball, and imagine that somehow the basketball gets placed in your hands, and this is anger. And you can hold that and kind of try to deflate it, let's say, or you can hand it to somebody else. And that is the experience I generally have of anger, of like, I feel the incoming anger at myself for whatever terrible thing happened. Something broke. It was probably my fault. And I do the check with that energy, that aggressive energy, angry energy is kind of like, okay, how did you fail here? And let's pinpoint that so it doesn't happen again. But then, of course, there are times where I'll look and I'll say, I don't think this was my fault. In fact, it was his fault. And that basketball gets launched elsewhere.
Yeah.
So the anger goes inward first. but it doesn't necessarily stay there. And when I read about judgmental ones, because of course that's not me, but when I read about judgmental ones, then that's kind of what I see, is that they have done that the energy, the emotion has gone inwardly, and they have turned it on another. And so twofold, if you have an experience of seeing ones get very judgmental towards you or towards others, here's just something worth noting. That's the process that's generally going on within them towards themselves first.
Right.
And if it gets turned, that's not necessarily healthy. None of this is necessarily healthy. But such strong intuitions about how things ought to be. They are a body type and anger type. And so that anger materializes as their underlying feeling to things that happen in the world. And then the hard work is, okay, well, what do you do with this, with this feeling, with this anger?
Yeah. I have definitely had to learn that the balanced approach is that anger is not bad. In fact, I often think I'm justified in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it does often spur me to action. I mean, even when I'm talking to clients that aren't ones, about anger, it has a purpose in the sense that it can let us know when we need boundaries. It can let us know when we have a need that's not being met. All these different things that anger serves a purpose in. But I think for me, for sure, I have to look at what else am I feeling too, because often I just think it's anger, but there's often disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
I would say most of the time it's some kind, disappointment, grief, sadness, whatever nuanced way you want to say that. But yeah.
I would love to build on that for 2 seconds, because I said something on our last podcast. It was Beth McCord who brought up that her anger was actually fear that was being masked.
Right.
And I said I thought the eights are probably similar on this front, but I said it without thinking about it. I said that's not me. My anger is 100% sadness. And I've been sitting with that and asking myself, I don't know if that's true. But as you're talking, that's apparently your shared experience. Disappointment, anger is
Absolutely.
disappointment.
Yeah. I definitely agreed with, like, I related to you when you said, like, I don't feel fear easily. I don't. I don't access that emotion very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever form of it, nervous, anxiety, scared, like, it's just not something I typically notice in myself. But disappointment, sadness, absolutely.
Mm.
And internal and external disappointment and sadness.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Disappointment in myself, for sure. Disappointment in others, just the world in general, the state of the world, just that it's not ideal, right? That it's not what I could see that it could be. Just
Yeah.
that frustrated idealist, right? Like,
Or
constantly.
even, for me, it's even seeking to improve. It's like if we were getting better,
Right.
I could say, okay, I'm patient. It's the fact that we are choosing to inject ourselves with cancer all the time that this is the problem.
Yeah. The same thing over and over and over. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Teach?
I just want to make a comment about your basketball analogy for a second.
Please
Because whenever I am holding a basketball, literally every time I'm holding a basketball, at some point I think about kicking it as hard as I can.
Wow.
Just launching it. And it's not like
You just think about it.
maybe
Though.
this is tied to my nineness. I don't do it because it's usually someone else's. It's always someone else's basketball. But in your anger analogy, the 9, like every single time I'm holding a basketball, one of the thoughts that goes into my head is, what would happen if I just kicked this as hard as I could? And just launched it.
Well, and interestingly, my 8 husband, he's not used the term basketball for his analogy, but he's talked about his anger before to me about how he has so much more control with his anger than I feel like I do.
Yep.
That he even says, like, I can decide, do I, it's that independent stance too, that like I can decide, do I want to hold this? Do I want to set it aside and use it later? Do I, like he has all these ways he can manage and decide what to do with his anger. And I do not feel like I have that level of control with mine.
Yeah.
He's going to take that basketball and throw it at some knucklehead who deserves it. And he's
Right.
going to laugh afterwards.
Yeah,
And then he's
absolutely.
going to point to him and say, hey, nobody else mess with me. Otherwise,
That's
you're going
right.
to get hit in the face with the basketball.
Yeah.
And also, it's your fault for not paying attention.
Oh my gosh, yes. That, yeah,
your
he's
fault.
definitely said that.
Yeah.
He's definitely said that. And even
Sorry your glasses broke. You should have been watching.
That's right. Yes. And even, well, okay, yeah, I see this idiocy over here. I'm going to hold on to this ball for just a little bit, and I'm going to hit him at just the right time with
Yeah, there
it
you go.
when it'll really hit him harder. He does that all the time too.
So your husband's an 8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
TJ's going to kick that ball as hard as he can. It's going to hit some 4-year-old in the face, and he's going to feel terrible for the rest of the day.
I did that once. I did that at a soccer game. I was playing soccer, and I just ran up to the ball, and I wanted to kick it down the field, and I launched it, and one of my teammates stepped in front of it like 6 feet away from me at exactly the wrong, and he couldn't play for the rest of the game. I hit him in the stomach so hard.
Oh, man.
Awful. Anywho,
This is a total side note. My mom, who's a 9, gets cut off in traffic. She's having a terrible day. Like, she was so frustrated. She decided this is the time, and she pulls around to give the person what for. Shakes her fist. There's probably a finger involved, and in the front seat was this little 5-foot tall nun behind the steering wheel, looking terrified.
yeah.
That sat with my mom for years, like in terms of, well, I'm never gonna get angry again.
Right.
Anyway, difference
it.
between the 8s and the 9s and the 1s here. Funny. Last thing that you said that I think is worth noting, and it's hard to put your thumb on it, especially when talking about shame, is that there are healthy experiences or healthy elements of our underlying feelings. So you can have a healthy anger. You can have a healthy fear. And I do think it's worth naming you can have healthy shame. Very difficult to pinpoint those, though.
Right.
And to make that, something constructive. But I did like that you mentioned that. Question 4. When we talk about how do you get what you want, we're elevating stance. So how do we get what we want? 1s are earners. We're responsive, reactive types. In the words of Joey Shuey, we are reactive doers. Does that kind of language resonate with you, Lindsay?
It does, as far as like earning, and of course being a doer. I don't resonate with being reactive, and this is probably my average to unhealthy oneness coming out here, that reactive has a negative connotation to me.
Sure.
I think of the reactive type. I don't remember what triad that is, but like with the 8, 4, and 6 being reactive, and
Emotional responsive.
Yes, emotionally responsive. So I think of reactive like that. Which is exactly what I try to discipline myself not to be. So responsive, I definitely can relate to. But yeah, reactive, I think I prefer to be proactive or responsive, not reactive.
Does compliant resonate with you? Some people will put that on us.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. And I think maybe a little bit, but I also think, and I think this is a little bit of a, I don't know, it feels kind of contradictory for me as a 1 that I'm in that, dependent, compliant, responsive, whatever you want to call it, stance. But I'm also very much about autonomy and independence. And so it's that definitely earning. I think that's what puts me in that category of, if there's this kind of if then going on, that like you have your thing on your side of the fence, I have mine. If you do yours and I do mine, then all will be great. Like it's this very kind of mutual, you know, um, coexisting relational thing.
Yeah. I think t- for me that calls back the idea of the internal standards, because like this is a conversation that Jeff and I have sort of been having off and on for like 7 years, that the like compliance dependence, the language around that often feels like external compliance or external dependence,
Right.
and it is all about like those internal standards. Like there is a should within the understanding of how ones operate, and so that reactive nature is always moving toward the should, right? But it's not based on what other people think you should be doing or what other expectations. It's all that internal standard.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an internal standard, and then I think I either heard y'all say it this way, or maybe I read it this way in y'all's um, notes, that it's the internal standards, but then I evaluate how well that's working based on outcomes that includes external and other people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's how I experience things. I don't necessarily. So, what it would be, we process with action. So we're performing in the world, and then we're evaluating. I don't know if you experience this. I evaluate highly through my intuitive center. So I'm doing things, and I'm getting a sense of feeling whether or not it worked. So you may know this. I work in real estate, fixing up old buildings. 90% of the time, I don't know if what I'm doing actually is the right move until it's actually pretty much done and I get the intuitive feeling of the space that I'm in. I'm like, okay, this is working. Or no, this needs to change. And so I am in that, I'm assessing, processing through action, assessing through my intuitive center. When it comes to stance on these fronts, I am trying to earn control and earn autonomy. If I work hard enough at the things I'm doing, then I feel like I'll probably be good in the world. So with my real estate work, like it's if I execute at a high level, then I have just this intuitive belief that, I'll probably get paid. I probably will have, oversight of myself and be able to do the things that I want to do. And I suppose that's where the earning comes in for me here. And so I do like the idea of I'm proactive. I'm not reactive. I'm proactive.
Yeah.
And I need to come back around to that in a different way, but I feel like I'm getting off stance when I start bringing in processing center, because so much of how I am in the world actually does lend itself towards executing at a high level and then assessing what I've done.
Yeah. Yeah. But I can definitely see, yeah, what you're saying, as far as earning. I think in my more average to unhealthy places, I see that the most. Like parenting is probably my most average to
Yeah.
unhealthy place, and I am so often challenged by my my independent people, my 8 husband, my 7 friend, um, that it doesn't mean that just because I execute parenting in this way that my kids are going to turn out this way. That they
Mm-hmm.
are their own independent beings also, and being able to stand independently from that is very hard for me. I connect what I do with their outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you said that. I feel like so granted, listener, you may have an abusive one as a parent, and I'm really sorry about that. But a lot of us who are one parents are actually quite gracious towards our kids and their autonomy and their sense of self, and we're not foistering some idealistic picture on them in their future. Just to set the record straight, there's a couple of us out here,
Yeah.
and Lindsay's apparently one of them.
Some of the time, hopefully.
Well, I think this touches on that whole stance. Like it's not just about earning. It's directly tied with that thinking repression. Like there's like all things being equal, if I do these steps in this order, I will get this outcome. The problem is all things aren't equal, and without that ability to naturally process with that thinking center, it's really hard to engage the world when the variables keep changing, right? So you're constantly moving and adapting to the variables, hence the dependence, like the compliant, like adapting to what's in front of you, and the formula just keeps changing.
Yes, that I resonate with a ton. The way you said that I am dependent upon the ever changing variables. Yes, that is my life. Absolutely.
And that would be the responsive reactive. You're reacting to what's in front of you. So our friend Joey Shuey prefers, when coming to stance, prefers reference points, and she'll talk about withdrawn types being internally referenced, reactive types being externally referenced, and assertive types being independently referenced. And as you're speaking, that's really what I'm hearing from both of us. Is it's much more, we're picturing how much the external stuff matters to us.
Yes. Yeah.
And the responsiveness will come in there, like, because the stuff out there matters so much to us, it can't help but be responsive to it.
Right. I can't remember if it was you guys or somewhere else if it was a Suzanne Stabile podcast or wherever. Listen to so many. It's y'all get meshed together sometimes. But
I'm happy to get meshed together with some folks.
That the whole like picture of something on fire. That my husband can look at that and go, do I want to engage with that? Do I want to do something about that? Do I want to walk away from it? Whatever. If there's something on fire, I can't look away from it. Like you do something about that. If you see a fire, you do something about that. I mean, obviously the actions can vary, right? From calling for help to going toward, whatever, but you do something. Yep. You don't stand independently from that.
Or you wait and hope that somebody else will take care of it before you get there. That's me. I do that.
Some folks.
Yeah.
But there again, like that's a great picture of, like, this is not something that one's naturally process. Like, it's not like you don't go through the part of objectively deciding if this is your fire to deal with.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Like Suzanne Stabile's question for herself, all the time is this mine to do? And I'm like, I think that's the responsive, dependent, compliant, whatever stance question. Exactly. Because I always thought I'm a very objective person. No, not in that regard. I mean, like when I think about, how I cannot, get away from that. If I see something, then it's my responsibility. That is so not objective. That's the opposite of objective.
Thing that's going through my mind here, and we'll talk about orientation of time next, I think. But for ones, it's always now. All of our energy is so focused on the now, and so if there's a fire, the now is what matters. Yeah. Also, as we're talking, and TJ mentioned this, but the language of compliant dependent, when paired with the superego, there may be kind of a flow going here of, like, I'm consulting my inner life, I'm compliant on the superego, but I'm very much asking, my conscience, as it were, what should I do about the thing that's out there? And the what should I do, that in and of itself is reactive. That in and of itself is a responsive thing. And so I may be compliant on my standards, dependent on my standards. But those who use that term, I think that's what they tend to mean, is we're compliant on some inner moral standards to guide our behavior. Yeah. But in my mind, the responsive, reactive, externally referenced is much more what the stance is about. It's about what's going on out there.
Outside, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Boom. Last word on stance.
Stance has a time orientation.
Yes, it
which
does.
leads us to
I was right. Next is, when do I solve my problems? Ones are the only types that take in the world through the present and engage the world in the present. We're kind of locked in the present.
Yeah, a quote that y'all had written down that I was like, wow, that kind of sums it up. Seek to eliminate the cause of anger, either the unruly emotions within or the sources of disorder without. Yeah. I mean that, yeah. And that's all happening. Yeah. In the moment. Right
And
now.
it's like, that's what life is right there for us. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like 75% of my energy is probably one of those two.
Probably. Hmm.
we the build one of the buildings that we sort of share space in was somebody threw a rock through a window last night. It's not a big deal. Everything's fine. But when I saw the texts about it, it was like we have this group text that this was brought to all of our attention. Jeff was already on the way to the building when I got the texts. And my first thought, even besides him going there, was, I hope I don't have to deal with this right now. And that language of like, you said, what should I do about this? Mm-hmm. That is not how a lot of the rest of us think about things.
Yeah.
And there is this like very present focused, the way ones are navigating the world is, what should I do about this?
Underlying thought there is something for me. This is probably my responsibility. And if I don't act, how much am I going to be kicking myself for the next year and a half when I think back on, I probably should have done something for
Absolutely.
that person.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's my, as far as orientation of time, I feel like that's most of my relationship with the past is that like, what could I, would have, should have done.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Otherwise the past is very kind of elusive in a way. I don't know. It's not super, just right there accessible to me.
I have made terrible financial choices. I never kicked myself for my terrible financial choices in the past. I've said a couple of words off the cuff that hurt somebody. Those are the things that come to my mind. Where have you failed in the past? Lost hundreds of thousands of dollars over here. Don't care. But I know people that I've hurt. And I suppose I go in four space, that relational, that's where I kick myself in the past. So just to catch everybody up for a second though, when exiting the present for the ones, it's either going to be moving into the future in their security number. When they go to 7, we can access the future and what we will be doing when we feel secure. When we're feeling stressed out, that's a place where, at least for me, I can look backwards. And those 3 time spaces are very obvious to me. Like, I'm never stressed out thinking about the future.
Well, and I also think that, like, you've made huge financial mistakes, but none of them have been gambling away your savings in Las Vegas, right?
No, but I bet you if I did, it would be colored with relational consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's not about the fact that you lost the money. It's the fact that your wife and you have to deal with this now.
Right. To be honest, the difference between gambling it away in Vegas versus spending it on an asset that tanked are pretty much the same thing in my mind.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say. It wouldn't matter to us if it has the same outcome, if it affects people the same way.
Consequence.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost entirely the relational aspect.
Yeah.
Is where the failure is. I'll kick myself for, like, if I built something, that fell over in a year. I build this fence and the fence isn't constructed well and it falls over. I'll kind of kick myself and say, well, now I'm going to have to spend energy on that.
Yeah.
But that won't be that will be a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and my husband laugh about the time that I caught the deck on fire. Like that's not something that I'm like,
It's a place of humor.
yeah, it's funny.
Sure.
But yeah, other things that I would be regretful of in the past. Yeah. It's about how, I impacted somebody else negatively.
Yeah. The one thing I would love to talk to you about this, Lindsay, is Riso and Hudson talk about 8s, 9s, and 1s all being resistant to the present. 8s have an outlet. They can focus on the future and what they're going to do tomorrow. To deal with them resisting the present, things are not going well here. I will kick your ass tomorrow. As was said, I'm going to hold the basketball till 3 weeks from now. And it's going to be really funny when, when I hit you in the face with it. The 9... So too, in resisting the present, can just go backwards.
Kick that basketball and go sit on a lawn chair.
You can take a step back into your hobbit hole and say, you know what, pacify.
Yeah, I'll just wait for the present to be in the past.
And I think that's why I envy those two types. Like I think Joey Shuey was asking y'all a question, right, about like what types would you want to be if you couldn't be your type or whatever. I don't know that I would want to be a 9 or be an 8, but like that I envy that for the like. Really, those are the only two types I find myself envious of. And you think, well, God, those are very different types. I think that's why, because I think I even put a note from in here when I was thinking about things that like the present feels so in my face all the time.
Yeah.
And so when I get resentful or angry, again, like even something with parenting, like with one of my kids' choices, it is so hard for me to move on from that and enjoy, the game that they want me to play with them, hours later or the next day even or whatever. Whereas my husband can get mad at them and then, they're laughing and cutting up the next minute,
Right.
And I have the hardest time doing that because it's still right in my face, like what just happened right now.
Also describes why when there's a fire, it's probably something I have to put out.
Yeah.
It's we're living in the present. We don't get to say, well, I'll just kick it down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that ties into that sort of ineffable instinct kind of thing. Like there's just a gut sense of that resistance to what's happening now, and we all handle it inappropriately in different ways. Like going to sleep to the present is not serving my life. There are times when it's awesome, but there are a lot of other times where it's like, oh crap, I've been napping, and I have no idea what's going on now. and 8s, if we have spent good time with 8s, we all know how 8s resistance to the present can sometimes burn things down.
Right.
And it that instinct for how to change what's in front of us.
Yeah. The serenity prayer for me, I've got it tattooed, or like reminders of it tattooed literally on my arm, because that for me is my biggest challenge, is to accept, what is, and what being able to have the wisdom to know that I can do things about and things that I can't. And it's not mine, like that. And that is literally my daily challenge.
Yeah.
So friends, the second half of our conversation with Lindsay, like most of our 10 question deep dives, is very, very good and really picks up steam. And if you are a 1 or love a 1, this is essential listening. You can hear the rest along with all our extended interviews at aroundthecircle.org. Sign up for a membership, try it out, read the first 6 chapters of our upcoming book there. And as has been said, we'll be starting to release our college course on triads in February, and just tons and tons of great material for your heart, for your soul, for your relationships there at aroundthecircle.org. With that, here's our outro. That's what I got. You guys got anything else we're saying on our 10 questions?
You put one note in here that I think is really important, is the hope in ethics.
Uh-huh.
There's the idea that the arc of the universe is bent toward justice, which I want to say is Martin Luther King Jr.
It is.
That is so important to the fate of humanity, right? Because there's people like me who are just like, well, this is why we can't have anything nice. Let's just let it all burn down. And then there's other people who are saying, yes, it all needs to burn down. Here's a match. And like, if we're gonna make it as a species, we gotta have some people who are saying it's worth it, right? And this is one of the things that ones have in spades is being able to look toward a future where things are better.
Man,
and
I
that
love
includes ethics.
I love that. I mean, that like hits, I don't know, almost makes me emotional. I have that word hope all over my office. Cause yeah, for me, like otherwise, yeah, it's just, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Friends, if with my normal outro goes here, we have all sorts of stuff on Patreon, which you can find at aroundthecircle.org. You can listen to the full recording of our time with Lindsay there. We have 2 other podcasts, Movie Typing and Start Here, both of which have received a surge of energy recently, which I'm excited to see. So if you have friends who are trying to find their type, send them to the Start Here podcast. And if you get into pop culture deep dives and Enneagram, Movie Typing is where to go. But again, tons of stuff on the Patreon, from college courses to our book releases and early drafts to full interviews. Lots to like there. And that's what I got. You got anything else, TJ?
I got nothing, man.
Lindsay Taylor, it's been a delight talking with you. If folks want to get in touch with you, are you taking clients? Are you looking to promote anything?
I do take clients. That can vary, time to time, just depending on what kind of influx we've got going on. But yeah, no, I'm not. That's not one of my strengths, is marketing. So I don't market myself well.
I know that there's rules, like cross-state rules with therapy. Do you have to be in Alabama to do stuff?
Yeah, ethically, yeah, you do.
Excellent. Well, if you are looking for a great therapist and you live in the state of Alabama, Lindsay Taylor is working for, I've already forgotten your organization.
Hope Springs.
There it is.
Perfect.
Counseling, yeah.
Yeah.
Rock and roll. Well, she's Lindsay Taylor. She's been a gift to us. He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook, and I'm always right about these things.
Thank you guys so much. It was so much fun, and it was really a privilege to be with y'all, listen to y'all for a long time. So it's kind of surreal to be here. So thank you.
Well, yours,
Yeah,
the
thank
gift.
you.
The gift is for us. So we're looking forward to keeping in touch.